Heyo. So this is that new series I was talking about starting in my last video. I'm going to call it My Experiences With, and as you can see by the title, this one is about Avatar and Legends of Korra. And what I want to do in this series is really just go through the first time I consumed a certain piece of media, something, at least for the first part of the series, that has stuck out in my life for one reason or another, and just generally tell about how I felt about it at the time, how I feel about it now, so it can serve as sort of a mini review for whatever I'm covering, and also to cover just the context that I consumed it in, because I am a firm believer in the fact that the context in which you consume something is a big determining factor in how you feel about that thing, not just positively or negatively, but the intricacies within that as well. And I called it My Experiences With because the other night I had the brilliant idea as I was trying to fall asleep of what if the acronym for the series spelled out Mew, and I could start every video by saying let's get mewing and then do the thing. That was significantly funnier at 1:30 in the morning than it is now at 4:02 in the afternoon, but fuck it, let's get mewing. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of those shows that people say works just as well at any age, and I feel like I'm a testament to that. Despite it coming out in the late 2000s on Nickelodeon, where I absolutely would have watched it, for whatever reason I didn't. And it's not like I didn't watch Nickelodeon at all. I love SpongeBob and Jimmy Neutron and Fairly OddParents, and I'm sure I even saw the intro for Avatar: The Last Airbender come on TV. You know, whenever you're watching a show when you're a kid, and you run a little too long, so you end up seeing the intro for the show that comes after. I know I saw Avatar's intro that way, so I knew it existed. You know, I was on a swim team for 10 years of my life, so my friends, whenever we were swimming, would always be like, oh, look at me, I'm a waterbender, and then just like splash another kid. So I knew what it was, I knew what it was about. I mean, shit, I even got this little dude, this little stuffed Momo, from a Happy Meal when I was like 8 years old, maybe. I had no idea what the hell it was. I just knew it looked kind of cool and I like stuffed animals, so I kept it. And in fact, I've lived in, that was 15 years ago now. Fucking ridiculous. But I've lived in 4 different houses since then, and this guy has survived every move. I don't know how. He's tiny and very easy to lose. But I even hung him up on a little thumbtack by my bed in this house that I live in now, despite that when I did that, I hadn't seen a minute of the show. So I'd always been kind of aware of it, and I knew generally what it was about, and I knew certain characters' names, but I'd never seen it until the summer of 2020, during the COVID era. And I did it because, like a lot of things during that era, any show that was on Netflix was going to have a huge resurgence in fandom, and Avatar was amongst the larger of them. I remember just seeing it way more on Instagram. I remember my friends bringing it up more. So when I started bringing it up myself, I would ask my friends around, like, oh, hey, did you guys watch this when you were kids? Is it good? And almost across the board, I got the answer of, oh, that was really good. You're going to like it. Why not watch it? And like I explained in my last video, I had nothing else to do between the months of March 2020 and October 2020. So, yeah, why the fuck not? I started watching it probably early summer 2020. And right away, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is something I want to kill my time with. And the longer I stayed with it, the more I started to like it. I remember about halfway through season 1, I was like, this is good. You know, it's cool. But especially when you get to that era or that part of the season of like the Great Divide, which everyone talks about as like the worst episode, it's just kind of something that I had in the background. I was paying attention to a little bit. But then as you get into that closing act of season 1 and you get to the Northern Water Tribe, that's when I like really started to lock back in, and I was like, oh, I kind of get what everyone was saying now. This is fire. And then season 2 just ramps it up even more. I remember grinding through that. I was loving it. And then the same thing for season 3, you know. Season 2 ended on that cliffhanger. Obviously, I didn't have to suffer through the consequences of that cliffhanger because I think Season 2 and Season 3 released 2 full years apart. If I'm not wrong, it's at least 1 full year. So, you know, Aang dying at the end of Season 2, I didn't have to sit through that cliffhanger of not knowing what happens to the main character for a full 365 days, if not twice that. And then I watched Season 3, and another thing I didn't get spoiled for the show at all, despite at the time it being out for like 15 years. And I am not good at that. So I'm very lucky that I was able to keep spoiler free on it, because there have been a lot of times where I was super excited to watch something, whether it's to go see a movie or to finish a show that had already been out, and I end up getting spoiled. Whether it's by luck or it's my own fault, where I like too many things on social media about the show, so I start getting more about it, and that more eventually ends up spoiling it. It happened to me with Arcane. It happened to me with, strangely enough, Multiverse of Madness. I saw a clickbait article about the roster of the Illuminati in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and I looked at it and I thought, this is going to be probably the biggest surprise of the movie, so if I click on it, I'm going to be spoiled. And I stared at it for 5 more seconds, and then I clicked it and read it. So it is my own fault most of the time. But all that to the side, I managed to stay spoiler-free for Last Airbender, which made the tension of the end even better, because I didn't know if Aang was going to have to kill Ozai or not. I didn't know if any of the side characters were going to die or not. I know it was a kid's show, but it wouldn't be the first time that something with like lasting impact happened in children's media back then. I didn't know. I remember this was a big thing. I didn't know if Aang was going to end up dating anyone, or if the Zuko and Katara thing was real. I remember thinking about that a lot back then, of like, people talk about Zuko and Katara like all the fucking time on Instagram. Is that really what they're going to do? And then I got to see the resolution of it, and I was like, oh shit, they went like the right way, in my opinion. I'm not going to get into all that right now. That's a whole different thing that I honestly don't want to talk about at all. But yeah, the point remains, I managed to stay relatively spoiler-free throughout the whole thing, despite it being so prevalent on social media. And I think that was part to do with it being a resurgence. You know, it wasn't coming out actively at the time. Like, when I got spoiled for Arcane, it's because I started Arcane 2 months after Season 2 ended. So people were still talking about it, as in, like, analyzing it and discussing it as they want to do it, not 15 years later just bringing it back up, you know what I mean? And I remember watching the finale, where I had set aside, I saw on the episode list that after the Ember Island players, I think it's after that, it's a 4-parter finale. So I chalked out, like, okay, when am I going to have 2 hours by myself, preferably at night, so I can turn all the lights off and just watch all 4 episodes straight through? And I did that. And that was the first time I did that, but it is not the last time I did that. I'm going to bring that up in this series later, I'm sure. But I remember doing that, and I remember it was such a satisfying feeling that I got to watch basically like a full movie as the finale of the show that had dominated my life for weeks at that point. And I loved it. I loved the show at the time. I still love it now. I don't know if I've said this since I've come back to this channel, but in my hierarchy of animated shows ever, it is number 1, and it is in its own tier. My second tier has 3 shows in it. We'll get to that when we get there, probably not in this video. But Avatar is in a world of its own for me. And it was the same back then. I loved it from the second I finished it to now, today. And I remember it was just like pretty much all I thought about for months after that. Especially like during COVID. People talk about the word escape when in regards to COVID all the time. I guess you could say this was an escape, or at least one of them. This is just like what I thought about. This is what took up my time. I was watching videos on YouTube about it. I was thinking about it. I was making my own little like what ifs about it, you know what I mean? And yeah, I loved it. It provided like such a cool thing for me to like put myself into during a time where there was literally nothing else in the world going on. And I got to talk to all my friends about it because they had all seen it when they were younger, and even some of them were rewatching it too, since again, what the fuck else were they gonna do? Nothing. So it was just such a cool thing, and I think it obviously impacted my life a lot of the time. I have a bunch of posters up here about it. You've seen them in other videos. I went with a little more of a zoomed in angle today, but if you watch the other videos I've put out recently, the posters are very prevalent. Obviously, I have the Momo thing. I have the hoodie I wore in my last video about Avatar. I have a bunch of shirts. I have an Appa plush somewhere. It was a big thing in my life at the time, and honestly, one of the biggest pieces of media that I've ever like dug myself into in my life. And that's saying a lot, because I do it a lot. I did it with Star Wars forever. I did it with comic books and superheroes forever. I did it with Avatar in 2020. And I just liked it that much. It became such a big part of my life and part of what I was watching. And honestly, after I finished it, after I cooled down for like a couple weeks, I just started watching it again. And eventually, After I watched it for a full second time, obviously it took me way quicker to watch it the second time. It didn't take me nearly as long. Eventually, I was reminded that there is a sequel series to The Last Airbender. And we'll talk about that in a second. But final thoughts on The Last Airbender. It's amazing. It got me back into those comics. It got me, it provided such a cool escape for me at the time. There was so much cool shit to think about and to do. And because the show is so structured and the world building is so strong in that show, it is so much easier to escape because you are made aware of so much of that world just by watching it one time. You don't even have to finish it. Every episode you feel like you learn something new about that world. And I think that's what makes it so good, or at least that's a major factor for me at least, is it provides such an easy escape for your imagination to go into because it just shows you stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, this too. Oh, and by the way, this and this and this. And it just shows you this whole world piece by piece. And it lets you kind of fill in the gaps yourself, but it gives you enough information because it is a kid's show after all, that the pieces are there and you can kind of roam where you want if you want to think about it. Bottom line, the show's a masterpiece. The emotional beats hit hard. The character stuff is great. Obviously, everyone talks about Zuko's arc being one of the best animated arcs of all time, not just in children's media, but in anything that's animated ever. And it's kind of hard to disagree, you know? It's amazing. Aang's arc is amazing. The power system and the world building is amazing. Yeah. Sokka is one of the better comic relief characters that I can remember off the top of my head, and it's going to be hard to beat that. Ozai is such a threatening villain, and they do something so cool with Ozai too, is that they don't show him until the last season. And that's another thing I'm glad I didn't get spoiled by. It's not like a major thing. It's not like his design is this overly freakish, crazy demon god, fire master, whatever. He is just a guy. He is just a really buff dude who's really strong, but you don't see him until the end. And that makes the propaganda in both directions that you hear about him so much cooler because you're constantly hearing about how this guy's a monster, how this guy's a freak who's going to burn down the entire Earth Kingdom when he gets the chance. Not if he gets the chance, when he gets the chance. And he is going to get the chance. So you better do something about him before that happens. You hear for 2 full seasons about how this guy's a monster. He scarred his own son. He turned his daughter into a weapon because he didn't want to do shit himself. His own brother is talking about him like he's a freakish beast from another dimension. And then you finally see him and you see, oh, it's just a dude. And that's part of some of the more mature themes of the show. It's that's how propaganda really is. In both directions, trying to describe the monstrosity of a true dictator. It has such a strong impact on your perception of that person. But then you find out all dictators are just a guy. A strong guy, maybe, but it's just a dude, you know? And then when you finally get to that last battle of Aang seeing him for the first time, or I guess second time at that point, the final battles are so cool. They have so much weight behind them. Obviously, Aang versus Ozai, because you have that whole episode where Aang is talking to the past avatars, trying to get advice on how to deal with him. You have the whole relationship built up over, at that point, 2 seasons between Zuko and Azula, and they have their final Agni Kai, and it's so sick. The visuals are cranked up to 100 in the finale. The finale could not have been better, and if you're a believer of a story is only as good as its ending, then you're going to put this show at a 10 out of 10, man, because the ending is magnificent. It's incredible. I loved it the first time I watched it. I loved it the second, third, however many times I've watched it now, and I love it the next time I watch it too. The show is immaculate. I think it's a borderline piece of perfection for what it is. And with that said, it's not the only piece of media in its universe. We've talked about this on the channel before, but eventually, I talked about The Last Airbender enough back then to be recommended, whether it was by my friends or whether it was by just me seeing it on Instagram. I got recommended The Legend of Korra, and that was a little bit of a different experience. I was considerably less aware of Legend of Korra when it was coming out than I was of Last Airbender, and I think that was just because I was watching Nickelodeon less. SpongeBob was getting worse, which I think was unanimously agreed upon at the time and now. Fairly Odd Parents got very different and worse in my opinion. Jimmy Neutron just ended and got replaced with Planet Sheen, which sucked. iCarly ended. I was never super into Victorious, but that ended too. And not to mention the other two of the big three kids networks were just popping off at the time. Disney had come out with Disney XD, and there was a bunch of stuff on there that I liked. And Cartoon Network was in what I will defend as its golden generation, with Adventure Time, Regular Show, Gumball, not to mention like The Clone Wars and Ninjago, I think overlapped all 5 of those shows at the same time. Ridiculous run they were on. And I know there are going to be some people who say, actually, Ed, Edd, and Eddie and Johnny Bravo were the golden generation of Cartoon Network. No, it wasn't. It was a good generation, don't get me wrong, but it's not that great. It was cool. Good. Not as good as what they did after. That's a different video. If you want that to be a whole video, it can be, but that's all I'm going to say on that for now. So, yeah, because of that, I just wasn't watching Nickelodeon a lot in general, and so I wasn't getting the ads for Legend of Korra at all. I do remember one specific instance of walking into a grocery store. I had to still be in elementary school, maybe early middle school, and there was a big, like, you know those cardboard, like, display shelves that they would do promos for in grocery stores? I remember vividly, I think it was Goldfish. There was like a Legend of Korra Goldfish stand. It was normal Goldfish. It wasn't like they did a special. They just had like a big cardboard Korra shelf with Goldfish on it. And I don't remember why I thought this, but at the time I thought like, oh, this show's about mining. It wasn't. It never was. I don't remember why. Something about whatever cardboard cutout they used, I looked at it and went, my takeaways were the show has a buff girl that shoots fire and they live underground in a mountain. I went 1 for 2, I guess, but I know I recognize the steampunk thing too, but I don't know why, but because of that specifically, I had the completely wrong perception of that show until I was reminded in 2020 that it was a sequel to Last Airbender. I had honestly completely forgotten about the fact that it existed at all until then. And unlike The Last Airbender, when I saw it on Instagram and when I started asking people about it or seeing things about it, the answer was not unequivocally, it's one of the greatest things ever, you should go watch it. Instead, it was more of one of two things. Either, I don't remember anything about it, or it was pretty bad, you shouldn't try it. Not an encouraging start to my experience with the show, and honestly, my first experience would only get worse from there. Eventually, I just kept seeing so much stuff about it that I thought, okay, either this is actually like the worst sequel series or sequel anything ever, or people hate this shit so much for no reason, and curiosity got the best of me to the point where I was like, okay, I gotta know which one it is. Problem was, it was not on Netflix at the time I decided that, at least not in America, so I had to go to a very, very legal streaming website to find it. The problem with those, again, very legal streaming websites is that they're in like 280p or 240p, 480, 720p. They don't look good. They look like shit is what I'm trying to say. Not only that, but usually when you go on those sites, the screen is mirrored, which doesn't matter that much for live action stuff. But in animated shows where characters are specifically drawn from certain angles so the proportions are not equal, when you flip it, it looks bad. I was going to say weird, but it's just bad. My viewing experience of the first time I watched the pilot for Legend of Korra was just horrible because not only did it look like shit, but the screen was flipped, so I didn't even see what it was supposed to really look like. I could kind of figure it out. But, if you draw a picture of a character looking this way and you flip the whole screen, it's not going to look like they're looking that way. The proportions are going to be off. So, because of that, I watched the first episode and decided, yep, I'm not doing that until I find an easier way to watch this shit. So I waited for it to come out on Netflix. And when it did come out on Netflix, I had completely forgotten everything about the pilot, so I had to watch that again. And I ended up watching the first roughly 4, actually no, it's definitely 5 episodes. I watched the first 5 episodes. I remember the number 5 specifically because the 5th episode is where the love triangle thing happens. Where Korra goes out on a date with Bolin and then kisses Mako, but Mako's dating Asami and blah, blah. The worst part of the fucking show by a mile. I got to that point and I was like, oh, I understand why no one likes the main character, Korra, and I understand why no one likes this show. And then I stopped watching it. I don't know why. Okay, I remember why that made me so mad, because I think at that point Bolin was my favorite character, and that episode ends with him crying and everyone else being like, "Oh man, that sucks," but then like still nothing really happens to them that bad. I remember being fed up about that at the time, so I was like, "Fuck this! I don't want to watch this bullshit anymore." Because I was already also kind of fed up about the whole logic thing of like, okay, well, why can Amon do all this? Why is technology advanced so much? Why is it so different? Why is Katara old and only in like 30 seconds? I was being butthurt about it. I wasn't giving it a really fair chance. I'll fully admit that now. And I don't know what drove me to try it again. I'm sure people that I know have their theories now. But for whatever reason, I tried it again. I was like, okay, let me push past the part where I don't like Korra, and I don't like whatever the fuck anyone's doing, and I hate Mako. Most of those things changed. I still didn't like Mako anytime that I watched the show, but I did like Korra. And that was a main thing that I heard before I started watching the show, was that, like, you're probably not going to like the main character, because she's kind of annoying. I was like, huh, that was weird. And I understand why people say that up until, like, the end of Season 1, I think. Towards the finale of Season 1, I was like, okay, she's kind of cool. I felt with her. She's pretty sick. So I got through Season 1, and I was like, okay, the finale was awesome. The ending was rushed, and I didn't like that at all. But there was enough cool shit, aside from all of, like, the breaks in the rules of the universe, the bloodbending and the full-time, all-day bloodbending, I don't think they called it telepathic bloodbending, but the guy couldn't move his body, and he could still bend. I was like, okay, I can look past enough of that if it keeps giving me cool shit that I can watch. That was my rule of cool at the time. I don't know why I start burping whenever I turn the camera on. I think it's like a curse. I was gonna say nervous tick, but it's more like a curse. I think that's accurate. Anyway, yeah, that was my rule of cool thing. I thought if they keep showing me cool stuff and the show keeps looking good visually, I'll look past it enough to see more cool shit. I'm not going to fall in love with it because I already have problems with it, and we're only in Season 1, and I've heard that it got worse, and it did. But I don't need to fall in love with it. I don't need this to be as good as The Last Airbender for me to, like, keep watching it. I just want to see something cool. This was, again, during COVID. Later in COVID, this was like, call it September, October, November-ish of 2020 that this was happening. So it was later in COVID, and I had started online school, so it's not like I had nothing to do, but I certainly didn't have my days full or, my life put together. So I had free time, and I was spending it on this. So I was like, okay, I'll start Season 2. And Season 2 starts with the Civil War thing, right? And the Civil War, I was like, okay, that's interesting. They're trying a little more adult stuff. Season 1 ends on a very adult note of murder-suicide, so can't get much more adult than that. But Season 2 starts with, like, a civil war, and I was a politics major in my first few politics classes at the time. So I was like, ho-ho, I can consume the political intrigue of this children's show a little better than most, so this is my shit. That's the mindset I had. Man, 2020 fucking sucked, huh? But I watched Season 2, and then the second they got to the part where they were talking about the first Avatar, I got a little wary. Not that the first Avatar stuff isn't cool. I like it less than most people do. I get it's a cool world-building thing. I just don't think those episodes are all that great. And I think that they take away a lot of time from Season 2 of what could have been good, but ended up being pretty awful. And then the end of Season 2 is just bad. I remember not liking the decision about her past lives being taken away. I remember I didn't like Unalaq at all, and not in the way that you're not supposed to like a villain. In wrestling, they call it heat versus go-home heat. The bad guy is supposed to have heat. You're not supposed to like the bad guy, right? But too much heat is bad, because then they just don't want to see you. Thanos is a good villain because you think he's evil, and you don't want him to win. But you like watching him because he's entertaining, right? Unalaq, in my opinion, was not only evil, but I didn't want to watch him. I didn't hate him to the point where I was rooting for Korra to beat his ass the whole time. I just wanted to stop watching the show because he was there, So I didn't like him. I didn't like the ending of Season 2, and I thought in my head, okay, both of these seasons have endings that have pissed me off to a certain degree. Why the fuck should I watch Season 3? So I didn't for like a week, and then I was like, okay, I've heard people say that season 3 is a banger. I'll start it. I started it. I stopped it right after. Because season 3, if you remember, starts with, oh my god, all the airbenders are back from nowhere. No, okay, at a certain point I had to draw a line, I think was my mindset. I had looked past all the rule breakings and rule changes from before, but now all the airbenders are back out of nowhere. And the fucking title of the show that I love so much, The Last Airbender, fuck that, I guess. So that pissed me off, and the fact that like everything was so different also pissed me off. I don't know why I was like a stubborn little baby back then. I don't know why I'm like a stubborn little shithead like that sometimes. But you know, season 3 starts and like the visuals are so different because there's vines everywhere, and now there's airbenders. I was like, oh, I don't want to watch this anymore. So I didn't. And then eventually, I don't know why. I was like, fuck, I got nothing else to do. I remember where I was, actually. I was in Lake Tahoe. And I remember snow came down way heavier overnight than we were expecting. So we couldn't leave the house. We couldn't, we could leave the house. We weren't snowed in. But we couldn't, do anything that we wanted to do because it wasn't supposed to snow at all, and it snowed multiple inches. So, fucking cut everything off the agenda. So I finished, the one piece of homework that I had that I probably, I almost said probably cheated on. I would never do that. I just used all my resources. Let's put it that way. I cheated on my homework, and then I was like, fuck, I have nothing else to do. It snowed outside. I can't go outside without getting really cold. So might as well watch this Korra show because I remember season 2 being snowy, so maybe it fits the vibe, you know? And season 3 wasn't snowy. I had forgotten about that, apparently. And I watched season 3. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty fucking cool. And then at that point, I finished season 3 and season 4, and I liked them both. And I was like, okay, this show is overhated. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not awesome. It's certainly not The Last Airbender, but it's not, great. And in a weird way, I had more to say about it. And it makes sense, right? If you watch something that in your mind is perfect and you love so much, yeah, you're obviously going to be able to talk about it forever. But you can only praise something for so long before you just get tired and instead of talking about it, want to watch it, you know? But if there's something that has flaws, it's much easier to talk about that because, well, I don't have the insane drive to watch this show because there are flaws, right? And I would rather talk about them and why I think they could have been better. And especially I'm kind of writer-pilled. Ew, I'm sorry I said that. That's awful. I'm writer-brained. Let's put it that way. So I like talking about the flaws in writing and story structure and all that kind of fucking nerdy bullshit. And there's a lot of that in Legend of Korra, so I like discussing it. So I think that's why this segment might end up being longer than the Last Airbender segment, just because I have more to say about it because there's more I would change about it. The Last Airbender, I would touch nothing about it, down to the frame. There's a thing I know about The Last Airbender that I'm pretty sure is 100% true. I'm pretty sure. I don't think there is a single still frame in that entire show. In all 61 episodes, so whatever that maths out to be, 30 plus hours, 30 and a half hours, there is not a singular frame of the show where nothing is moving, or at least not multiple of them in a row. So there's not one shot. Yeah, why did I say one frame? There's not one shot where nothing is moving. There's water moving in the background, or lights that are glowing on and off, or characters are moving their hands, or their hair is blowing. Something is always moving. And that makes it literally triggers a psychological reaction in your brain that says, oh, motion, keep watching. Right? It's such, down to those details, it's so perfect to the point where it might not be intentional. That's also another video. But it is purely magical lightning in a bottle. You couldn't make something that good if you tried to make something that good, especially for the medium that it's in. And then Korra, on the other hand, yeah, it's cool. I like watching it. It's a comfort show in the fact that I can just kind of turn it on, and if I have to do something else, I'll pay attention at the cool parts, like when they start fighting, and then I'll stop paying attention when they're doing boring shit, like any kind of relationship scene, or if Mako's on screen at all. Easy. So the two shows are great. I saw them pretty close together. It was all in 2020 that I started Last Airbender and finished Legend of Korra. It's the span of 5 months in 2020, maybe 6. And yeah, that's my experience with these shows. I've consumed a lot of it since then. I've bought a lot of comics. I have one right here, actually, that I've got recently. I have a lot of the Avatar ones, but the most recent one I got is The Legend of Korra, Ruins of the Empire. I got the name wrong last time I talked about this. Ruins of the Empire. I have probably like 500 stickers of Avatar that teaser for a special project, special video I'm going to make soon. Hopefully. I've been thinking about this for way too long. You'll see those soon. Obviously, the posters, the plushies, the shirts. This universe has been a big part of my life in the past 5 years now. It's been 5 years. That's crazy. It's late March in 2025. Did you know that? It's late March. COVID was 5 years ago. Like, this week 5 years ago. That's crazy. GG's, man. Good luck. Anyway, yeah. These shows have been an incredibly big part of my life. They mean a lot to me. The Last Airbender specifically will always hold a special place in my heart. And this universe in general always will. I hope the future projects that they come out with are great and at the very least invoke the same feeling they've invoked for me in the past half decade now. Holy fuck, I can't get over that. But yeah, if you stuck around this long, thank you. I'd love to hear your experience with these shows in the comments. I'd love if you liked and subscribed a little bit even more. And I think I want to keep doing this series. I had more fun filming this video than I thought I would. So yeah, why not? Let's keep going. Fuck it, I'll commit right now. The next video I make in this series will be my experience with Red Dead Redemption 2. I have a poster of that up here too, so if we're going to use the room rule and say the first videos in this series are only something that's in this room, well, Red Dead's up next. So, yeah, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Oh, wait, don't go anywhere. I forgot something. I forgot one thing. Don't go anywhere, please. I promise this is not a sponsorship, although I'm flattered that you think I have a sponsor. I want to talk about the music that I completely forgot about somehow to talk about in this video. It triggered to come back to me because as I was editing this video, you'll see in the transitions before this part, the music just hit me hard. In both these shows, the music is perfect. It's called Avatar's Love in the first show, in Last Airbender. The song that plays at the end, where Aang and Katara kiss, it plays a couple times before that as well. Excuse me, I had to fucking run back upstairs from my editing area, which is just my couch downstairs where a TV is, to come back up here and say this part, but the music is absolutely immaculate. And specifically, and I don't know why, the ending song, the credit song from Legend of Korra, which is the song that I used and hopefully won't get copyrighted for in the transition into Korra in this video, it just hits a different part. It's such an emotional sound, and I don't know why, but all the music in these shows are great. Down to the secret tunnel song that the dude strums on his little thing when they're walking through the secret tunnel. That guy's amazing. I love his songs. The actual instrumentals in the shows are great. In Korra specifically, that song just hits hard. And that's honestly, when I recorded that song and I edited it down to fit in the video, I went, oh shit, I forgot. So I had to run back up here and say that's honestly the part of these shows that has stuck with me the most. The character design is amazing in both. The stories are amazing in Last Airbender. The action is amazing in both. The emotional weight is amazing in Last Airbender. But the music is just something, man. And music is special like that. If you hear a good song, it's going to stick with you just because you cannot forget it. It is stuck there. It keeps playing. That's how I feel about these shows. And honestly, something that's going to become a running theme in these videos. Oh, little teaser. A lot of the stuff that I want to talk about in this new series has a connection to a certain song or certain music. And this is no different. So this is officially the first music segment of the Mew series. My experiences with. It's not just Mew, I promise. But yeah, the music in these shows sticks out to me so much. It triggers something in me at this point. I mean, as I've said, frighteningly, a couple times in this video, it's been 5 years since I watched these. So yeah, music can bring you back. People call music like the closest thing to a time machine we have is because if you listen to a song that you haven't listened to in a while, it's going to take you back to that time. You know, I listen to the Korra outro especially, and it takes me back then. It takes me back to sitting in that cabin in Lake Tahoe, watching the snowfall outside and thinking like, oh man, stuff's really changing, huh? You know, as an angsty little fucking 18-year-old. I listen to the Avatar's Love, or the guy playing on his little guitar, or especially Leaves from the Vine. And it just takes you back. And like honestly, it's hard to hear Leaves from the Vine and not tear up. I'll be honest. It's such an emotional song as it is, and when you know it in the context of the show, it honestly gets hard for anyone not to cry if you know the whole context and then you hear it again after a while. But yeah, that's my final note. Music in these shows is just as phenomenal as the other great stuff I've talked about. So thank you for joining me on the first Mew experience. And for real this time, I'll see you next time.